Hi, folks. Hawksley Workman here with Marcus Paquin, who's in Montreal. Marcus co-wrote most of the record with me and produced and mixed the record and arguably recorded it too. I was just sitting there like a bump on a log, and we finally were going to have a little chat. I miss this guy since I've moved
I miss you, man.
from Montreal, and here we have. We're checking in on this record and have a little chat about it because there's people who've asked him questions. I have some from online and what have you. And good morning, Marcus Paquin.
Good morning, Hawksley Workman, the great Hawksley Workman. It's nice to see your face, your beautiful face.
Good to see you too. Pre-pandemic, you and I were spending a lot of time in a van as we were ambling through Ontario because you had joined the Sarah Slean Hawksley Workman tour on guitar, bass, vocals, and other stuff. So
yeah, so fun. Like right to the very edge of the lockdown. Like we actually made our way all the way to Ottawa for a show that got shut down because the government decided it wasn't a good idea. It was crazy.
It was crazy. Here we are, like how many months later, and like I just remember feeling pretty nervous and scared, and of course, like nobody knew what was going on, but
yeah.
I had you go and get me a bottle of Tylenol. That's what I was like. Can you get me Tylenol? I'm gonna need it. Oh boy! We were all grasping at straws that day. So, so we'll jump to this record. I believe it's number 18 for me, but every record feels special, obviously for because it represents a time and place in an artist's life, but this one in particular feels special because I feel like it's really good. And not that I put out a lot of music, which is everybody knows that, and I think that I've put out some very good records, some good records, some great ones. I think this is like, I feel like this is one of the great ones.
I love it.
And
exciting
I
record.
feel like when we were making it, I felt like I was making it as like an afterthought because I had just like finished the previous record, Median Age Wasteland, and I was like, I still had some lyrics in me, and I still was like, oh, I really want, and I wanted to connect with you, and we had tried one song together.
We did Song of Summer together.
Song of Summer, I forgot about that, which is on Median Age.
Yep.
Totally forgot about that. And that was the beginning of us like sort of tiptoeing into the water, working together.
Yep.
I forgot it was Song of Summer. Okay, so that's crazy. And again, that was just, Song of Summer was a lyric that had been sitting in the lyrics to be used ASAP pile.
Yep.
And then I guess I thought too, maybe we should use Song of Summer as some sort of a remake for this record. We didn't do that, so that's probably good. So how did it happen then? Why did I keep coming back? Do you remember, or?
Well, I mean, I remember when we first met. Do you remember that?
Yeah, the first day I moved to Montreal, you're working with Tim here, literally a block up the road from me at Joe Grass's studio. In Horn.
That's right. Yeah, Tim was like, hey, my friend Hawksley just moved to town and he's around the corner. Do you mind if he drops in? I was like, Hawksley Workman, of course. And I'll be honest, I was a little nervous. You know, Hawksley Workman's gonna come into a recording session. The great Hawksley Workman. I was nervous, dude, for sure.
What,
dude?
Yeah, but great Marcus Paquin, I was nervous too. How does that make any sense?
I love it. Yeah. So you know, you came in and we were recording some creative Joe Grass magic, and you know, you were sitting there, and I was thinking, man, I've got to make sure I don't mess anything up. Hawksley Workman's here.
No, you weren't.
I was, man. And you stuck around for a while, a couple hours, and we chatted a little bit, but mostly you were just like kind of a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
And then when you left, I think we sort of like made a soft plan to have coffee.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and then we had coffee and we chatted, and you were just kind of getting a lay of the land, new to Montreal, meeting, you know, the people who are here, studio spaces and whatever. And then just in passing, I think like as we were parting ways, I was like, well, if ever you want to work on some music, write some tunes or whatever, that's, you know, I'd love to do that. And so we did. Like, I think it was that week you came by, played sort of the backbone of Song of Summer, with kind of like what felt to me like you weren't sure if it was any good, and I was like, it's really good. Like I was blown away, and I was also blown away by like the fact that you were even reticent to like you weren't sure that it was a great tune. I was like, yes, it is. So that's where we started. We started with that one. We finished that tune, like we did it in a couple hours. We finished that tune, and then we just made a plan to do more after that.
Well, and I'm glad we did, because like, I mean, it's funny. I need a muse, to some degree. Like in the early days, I never worked with anybody, because to me, I was like, I want to make sure everybody knows that I'm the only guy behind this music. I'm the big brain here, and like, definitely when I was like in my early 20s, it was like, people need to know that I'm the only guy operating here. And then as I get older, it's like, you're just so bored with yourself, And coming across, somebody like you, and then being in your realm, like, I'm also, probably one of the maybe lesser attractive elements of my character can be sometimes just that I'm competitive, And I'm like, you've worked with some people that I really dig, like The National or Hey Rosetta or Arcade Fire or whoever. And when we were first working together, I was like, I got to do something that blows this guy's mind, because he's been in the room with some serious talent, And that's the kind of motivation I sometimes need. Like, I need to know that you have like access to a spectrum of talent that most people I would work with on a day-to-day wouldn't necessarily. Like, you've been in the room with people who are great at lyrics, great at music, great at harmony, great at ideas, and it's like, shit, this guy is going to be hard to impress. And I got really excited and / nervous. And I remember when we did Let's Fake Our Deaths Together, that I think was the second song we did together.
Might
and
be,
we talked about some of the sessions you had done with the National, and I was kind of poking, like, basically like, what does this guy think of me? Does he think I'm like got something or not? Like, and, that's just a little bit of like, creative, just creative person, like lack of self-confidence stuff, which is natural. I think everybody who makes stuff for a living goes through those, what does this guy think of me kind of moments. And so I was like, I really got to make sure that I write something that blows this guy's mind. Because like, I remember you had the guitar and we were building that song from the ground up, which is how we did most of the songs on the record, is came in with 0 and built it from lyric 1, harmonic, chord idea, groove idea 1. And I was just like, I got to blow this guy's mind. Like, how do I do it? I just got to work really hard to be super creative and exciting, which is ridiculous in a way.
And you did every day. Like, no, but seriously, like, I've worked on a lot of records at this point, and the thing that I'd never seen before is going from 0 to, which in a lot of cases on this record was a finished record. Like, not only a song written in the span of a day, but a song fully recorded and produced by the end of the day. Some of these tunes we'd add a couple bloops and blips after, but like, your creative spark and energy and ability to generate this wheel of ideas and open all the doors and all the windows and look through all of them and grab the best stuff and put it together in the most sort of focused and energized and kind of way. Was just like, it was amazing. It was amazing to be in the room and be part of that. Because like I've always said, no leads to nowhere, right?
Yeah.
And when we were working together, it was all about what is like, here's this thing, as you say, here's this muse, here's this idea, let's follow it and let it bring us down a road, and we're just going to follow that road and say yes to what it's asking for. And it was amazing.
It was amazing, and I feel like I was also going through a bit of, like, I was starting to toy with the idea of not drinking as well. So I know there was a lot of sober there was a lot of sobriety in those early sessions. Like you were seeing me fresh from like not drinking, which was kind of in the experimental phase.
Yeah.
So yeah, and you also make great coffee too. And you're a coffee, like, you know, you're an espresso aficionado. Like the days would start with, for me, typically I had a very clear head, and then you would hit me with one of your like massive coffees, and it would just be like, let's get in.
Your eyes would grow by 20%.
It, yeah, it was a very, I mean, that time in Montreal for me was big, meeting you, meeting a lot of the other players that I got to meet. And somehow I fell into like, I met the right people all within like the span of a few weeks, and a lot of like-minded people of same age, like, you know, you and I are around the same age, and Murray is around the same age, and Steve Ramsey's around the same age, Jace is around the same age, Adrian's around the same age. Like there's a lot of these, like, I don't know why I found a community so easily there, and maybe just because, you know, I'm a solo flyer for sure. Even when I was living in Toronto, I didn't put myself in any community. I definitely stayed to myself. But when I moved to Montreal from the country north of Huntsville in Ontario, like I felt like my resolve was starting to fade away a little bit in the country. Like it was an idyllic life, and I had my 50 acres and I had my snowmobile, and like I had my greenhouses or whatever. But what I didn't have was the urgency to make something important. And I feel like the move to Montreal and then going down. So you're in the studio where we wrote the record and recorded the bulk of the record. And I mean, just as a practice of getting on my bike and riding up to your place, or taking an Uber up to your place, like going into your room with you, and you have a natural exuberance too. I mean, it's no wonder why you've made great records and why you attract great people to work with, because like this idea of like you aren't one of those kind of producers either. And that, like, I think back to when I was in my 20s, I was a dominant personality. I know that's not how you do it. Like, not to the point of being like brutal, but like definitely when you're younger and you're trying to establish yourself. And I'm not sure if this was the same with you, but you know, I was more rigid then than I am now. Like now I'm just like, look, I used to walk into the room in my early 20s into my 30s as a producer, like, everybody sit down. The guy with the big ideas has arrived. Just, you know, get in line, and I'll give you the yes or the no. But now, you know, as you get older, it's just like, geez, like I don't want to be responsible for a lot of this stuff. I want to just be somebody who gets to enjoy the atmosphere of potential, you know, ideas. You know, were you like that when you were younger? Like,
No, different. I think like I went from as a young musician to being full of ego and bravado and thinking I was the greatest, and at one point realizing I was not, and realizing all the things I did not know.
right.
And I think that fucked me up for a while.
Yeah.
For a while, I was just like, "Oh my god, there's all this shit I don't know." And I think it hit me in the self-esteem gear. I was like, "Oh my god, there's all this shit I don't know." And I think I focused on that for a long time. I managed to get a lot of great stuff done in those years, but the work that I did was really recognizing what my talents were, what I was bringing to the table. You know, I'm not a tech nerd. I don't care about the tech stuff. And I think I sweated that for a long time, thinking like, I'm not that guy. Like, oh my God, like maybe I need to be that guy. I'm not that guy. Yeah. I'm the guy who likes to, the bottom line is, and I think the thing I realized in the last few years is the only thing I care about is that the music I'm making evokes some type of emotional response in the listener.
Yeah.
That's all I care. I could do a whole record on a fucking iPhone, and if it makes somebody think or feel something, I've succeeded.
Yeah. I think I get it. I know what you mean too about that feeling of that you know everything when you're younger. I mean, it applies to more than just music. Like that's just the condition of being young is like you're equipped with a bizarre pair of goggles that lets you believe that like everything you're thinking and believing is the absolute 100% truth. And then you get older and it's like, holy smokes, did I ever not know anything? And I think I think you do get better at a lot of stuff by realizing. I mean, there are in some cases, like for instance, when I pick up the guitar now, I know I was a better guitar player when I was in my 20s. I had practiced more. I was more fiery, more agile. There are definite things like the physicality of being younger, which is exciting. And definitely as a drummer, I'm always seeking to replicate the sound of being young, because that's the sound of rock and roll. But definitely I'm trying not to replicate like just being dumb, the dumb parts of being young. Like there's something about the importation of like youth energy, but more like measured and holistic and humble approaches to things. I think, like you said, I think we arrive at way better stuff now. I mean, in even the record's only been out for like a handful of days, but what I keep hearing from people is, oh, it's, you know, one of your best, or this is your best. And as you know, for somebody like me, and I don't know how you like, for somebody like me, I think, okay, then if this is the case, I didn't know I was making something that people were going to go, hey, this is really great. Like I said, like I was going to you kind of as an afterthought. I was flirting with the idea of sobriety at the time. Like we were writing these records literally between 8:30 a.m. and 3 p.m. kind of thing. Like
9 hours.
Yeah. And if somebody was to say, you know, interview me at that moment going, do you think you're making one of the greatest records of your career? And I would be like, I really don't know. I'm just showing up.
Yeah, not sure.
But of course, now I want to go forensic and go, well, how did we do it? Like, because I'd like to read. And you can't do that, right? Like, can you go, oh yeah, let's try and retrace our steps, draw the roadmap, and then just do that thing over and over again? You can't work like that, or can you? Or
I mean, again, like I think the road to success on this, or one of the reasons that it is the great record that it is because we were following the song,
right,
and we were saying yes, and we were recognizing what was great. I think that neither of us put our egos in the game at all. You know, like when I generated a great idea, I would look at you and you'd be doing this. You know, like you're giving me the big hawk, like I love this idea eyes. And same thing, like I remember when you played the bass line on Acid Wash Jeans. Do you remember that?
No. Can you put it up? Can you just play it in the background?
Yeah. I gotta fast forward through the intro because we got this great long intro that we enjoyed ourselves so much, just like playing into room mics with all the bells and stuff. Okay, so here.
Oh right. Oh yes.
So here's the space line. Turn up. I don't want to be.
Yeah.
Ah.
I remember. Yeah.
You know, like I remember when you came up with that keyboard part, and I'm like, oh, we need a bass line. And in my head, I had this thing, and then you started playing that, and I was like, holy shit! Like that is amazing. And it was funny because you were doing it, and kind of you had this look in your eyes, like I don't know if this is any good. And I was like, this is fucking good.
Thanks. You know, the Mounties experience really like put a lot of gas back in my tank as a bass player, and a bass player with a pick. And also like my instincts for 80s music, like the 80s still rules me, you know? So anything I'm going to do is going to come from that angle. And again, I wanted to blow your mind every single time. Like, and so and I really, really need that in a way. Like, so it's cool that I just wanted you to feel impressed. And it's like a tragic flaw in my character. It's been there since I was a kid. Like when I was a kid, I wanted to be like, I was a very strong student, and like, I was just that person. I want the teacher to like me. It's ridiculous. It's not very punk rock.
But the thing about that, like, there's a potential negative connotation to just, like trying to impress somebody, like, who can do the biggest can opener off the high board. Like, who cares? But like, you know what I mean? But like for you, your version of that is, how can I elevate this song in a way that both like lifts the song and also takes it in a direction that you totally didn't expect. Like you're not doing a big can opener. What you're doing is you're opening this new landscape with that bass line.
Right. I feel that. I get what you're saying. And probably you have a set of like sort of cross-pollinated visual and auditory instincts like I would. Like,
yeah,
I know what you mean. Like I would sense like, oh yeah, like there's a vision going on, like the thing is opening up, and I do understand that.
Yeah.
And a lot of those tracks, like, a lot of people, of course, the question of like how do you write these songs? Like, does it? And then really, oh my goodness, I don't think that's true. Sorry, I'm looking at somebody saying I have a phone call in a half an hour. I don't think I do. Like how do these songs get written? What comes first, the lyrics or the music? And for me, I've never been almost never a lyrics or music guy first, always at the same time. And the ability to go in and record and write at the same time now has like kind of given people like me this phenomenal creative opportunity, which is how do I like the ability to have a song kind of like create itself while you're watching it, and so like a bass line like that can lead to a new lyric idea once you start creating the universe. Like for me especially, like the lyrical images start to get brighter and brighter and brighter as the song starts to, like the feeling of the song starts to get more and more put together. I'm like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense to me, and I definitely don't know how. I wonder if some of my like older songwriting muscles have gotten a little bit weak. The old sitting at the piano with a pad of paper stuff that like, I would have written a lot of songs like that in the early days. But even in the early days, I still recorded, even like Striptease, which was like my first proper hit. Like that was recorded as a beat and a riff in the studio. That wasn't like, I'm going to write this with the piano. I guess I'm saying, like, do you find now, like, just as a creative tool, like the studio has become a writing instrument? Would you agree?
I mean, for a lot of people, I would say the vast majority of the records that I make, the writing process and pre-prod comes before we go into the studio.
Okay.
Like what we did together is the exception to the rule.
Oh, okay. See, maybe I don't realize that because I started to go to Stockholm and London and LA about 10 years ago when I signed a publishing deal where it's like, I was like really hell-bent on becoming that guy who's like writing songs behind the scenes for people. Which meant I started to normalize this idea that you walk into a studio and come out in 4 or 5 hours with a finished song. Like, which is what you do.
That's like, that's like this kind of songwriting sessions. Like the more I get into songwriting sessions where you kind of, your publishing company pairs you up with this publishing company's artist and you get together and you do a thing, that's more, for sure. That's kind of the expectation. But, and not to say one way is better or worse than the other, but like, I guess I tend to work with bands more, and to have a band write a song and finish it in a day, I don't know that I've ever seen that. I mean, I know it happens, but I definitely haven't been part of that,
It's as a producer, it's one of the reasons why I don't like working with bands per se, is that when you have to indulge everybody's opinion in the room, like it definitely takes time. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I love how you, yeah.
No, but I mean, like, I have to say, it's like all of it, as long as the group of people is ready to try things and that they're ready to open the doors, I always find that process to be fun for different reasons.
Mm.
You know, it can be lengthy, it can take time, but I definitely I'm a big believer that you know, some of its parts a little bit. Like I think that putting, like, for example, putting the two of us in a room together and playing off each other's strengths made something better than if I were to go off and do a thing, or you were to go off and do a thing on your own. You know, and with bands like I, you know, I won't speak for you, but I'm pretty sure we both love Radiohead, for example.
Sure.
And the Radiohead records and a Tom York record, Tom York is making great records, but I would much rather listen to some of its parts, Radiohead. You know?
I hear you, and I think
it probably takes a lot longer to make a Radiohead record than it does to make a Tom York record.
Yeah, I wonder if that's true though, because I remember like
I do.
Yeah, okay. I remember listening to OK Computer on the treadmill. I remember very, very clearly. I was 30 years old. It was a record I knew very well. I mean, I think if I was 30, I'd been living with that record for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
And I remember having this like eureka that it's a band playing. Like even as much as OK Computer is a production album, it's the sum of a whole lot of musical parts that was played live. And then once it hits you that these people are playing parts that add up to the sound of OK Computer, it's like, it is actually more a musical record than it is a production record, even though Goddard like makes it sound brilliant. And it was like, it was a kind of sounding record we never really heard before. It was crispy and like overcompressed and sounded very modern. Like it was at the very beginning of like digital recording. But when you clue into the fact that it's just a lot of great parts, like all of a sudden, it kind of like wakes you up, because I think there was this instinct that started to kind of, as the producer started to take over music, I feel like in the 90s, like all of a sudden, like a label could hire a producer and you could turn anybody into anything almost. Like you didn't need artists. So we got into this impression that like, oh, producers were somehow behind the scenes, like masterminding. And I think that's the case in a lot of situations, but I think in a lot of other situations, a producer is there as a facilitator. I'm guessing like, for like a Radiohead situation, I don't think Nigel Godrich is going like, we need this part to be played. And you and I have been in situations, I'm sure, as producers, where it's like, can you play something a little bit more like this? I think in the case of Nigel Godrich with Radiohead, it's like, get out of the way, make it sound cool.
Yeah.
Let these guys do their thing.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's choosing his moments when he's, you know, getting into the creative side of things. Yeah.
So, well, let's go through this.
Yeah,
we're half an hour into our discussion. I already said we should only be an hour so we don't bore people. But I've got the record here. Thanks again. Song number 1 is Dwindling Beauty, which was, I always remember this as the first song we wrote together, but it's in fact the second, because the first one we wrote together was
Young and Wasted? Song Summer, right.
Summer.
Right. And then it was Dwindling Beauty?
Dwindling Beauty is the first one we wrote together.
Okay.
Because I remember prodding you for questions about working with the National. I was like, because I wanted to know, it's Matt, right? The lead singer?
Yeah.
I wanted to know, like, and also too, because I was flirting with sobriety. I was like, do they drink? Do they smoke weed? What are they doing behind the scenes? Like, how do they make stuff? Like, are they sober people? Because there's a lot of like behind the scenes sober type people in the biz. You don't know. Yep. But I was basically pricking you for information and about, you know, how does that band work? What are they doing? How quick is he coming up with lyrics? Like really like just giving myself a repertoire of information that I, again, as a competitive person, like what is it that I need to do to be as impressive, you know?
Oh yeah.
It's ridiculous.
You're impressive on your own, Hawksley.
Oh, please.
Just saying.
Oh, it's just that it's just the Canadian music business self-deprecation stuff, you know.
Yep. Yep. Stop doing that.
I still remember that when you picked up the electric guitar in the chorus and just played rock chords, and I was like, this is awesome.
Do people still play bar chords? I'm like,
oh, I remember that thinking like bar chords, but it was so cool. I was like, fuck.
I was probably playing them on this though, right? This guy's plugged in. I'm using it all the time.
Well, that's the other thing. Like, you and I have a shared love of 80s like stunt or speed guitar playing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I remember walking down to your basement and you had a Steve Vai like CD, like basically like just had been played like in your CD shelf, and I was like, hello guy that thinks exactly like me, like Passion and Warfare. Are you joking? Like, and the fact that your studio is outfitted with Ibanez guitars, I was like,
thank you.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that song. Let's see if somebody, Less Rage, More Tears is thing. I don't know if anybody has. I don't know if there's been any questions about that song. Although I mean, I do love that song a lot, and like somehow or other, I feel like some of my more, I don't know. Dwindling Beauty, Let's Fake Our Deaths Together. Okay, yeah. Around Here was the next song on the record.
Yeah.
I just love this song. I mean, it was the first single off the record. It came out, we dropped it last year. It got a great response.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like in a way you also let me, like, with those ridiculous like electronic drum fills and stuff, like I feel like when we were tracking that, I was like, I don't know, pushing the taste bar a little bit, like with those fills, like wondering like, is Marcus is he gonna buy this? Like, is he gonna buy like, because like, I can be a little over the top, I think, and it would have been common in a recording situation for me to play something ridiculous like those drum fills and have somebody go, what? Like, no way. And you were just...
I mean, it became clear pretty quickly that you and I share a love of extreme things. You know, and the definition of extreme varies, you know, like extreme, like I like to listen to a song that's going to make me bawl my eyes out, or, you know, I like, as you say, Steve Vai, or like the variety of music that you and I gravitate towards kind of mirrors each other. And so, you know, I think people underestimate how extreme the music they listen to actually is.
Right.
Like when you listen to it, you know, you and I have digested the Beatles probably to a similar degree. And hey, when you listen to the White Album, that is extreme. Like the polls on that record are as extreme as anything that's been made since then. And so when I've been in studio situations where people are sort of like, whoa, you know, pull back, that's too crazy. I'm like, really? Is it too crazy? Like, is it destroying the song? And if so, then yes, don't do that. Yeah. But is it, are you scared? Is it your ego that's saying you're afraid that someone's going to think you're too crazy? Because if that's the case, then just rewind, go back, visit the White Album, and then come back and talk to me later.
It's funny that I feel exactly the same. Like, and I feel like, and maybe it's just Canadian instinct, but even lots of artists I've worked with, there's an instinct to like chill it out. Like, we don't need to be this aggressively different, or this aggressively weird, or this aggressively audacious. And I think because you were a jazz school kid and on guitar, and like I was like, I didn't go to jazz school, but I put in the thousands of hours on drums. My whole dream was to be like a flashy jazz fusion drummer for hire. That was my goal. And I feel like when I found out that you were a guy who'd made and worked with all these super cool bands, but who behind the scenes is a muso who listens to Steve Vai, I was like, man, like, because I don't consider myself particularly cool. Like, I don't listen to cool stuff. Like, I'm not wired to be the cool guy in the room. Like, I am so like earnestly into like you said, like weird stuff. Like, who was pushing it the furthest? Like, I've always been less about the outfit and more about like, how good is this? Like, how crazy is this? How big are the ideas from this artist? What are they bringing me? Like, give me something exciting. I think it's like, why I sort of somewhat secretly like obsess over Frank Zappa, for instance. Like, it's like, I still return to Zappa because I'm like, well, this guy gives me big ideas. Like, it's still like some of the biggest, it's like a density of big ideas. And like, sometimes if somebody like, oh, you got to hear this, or the cool hip thing that's like happening, I'm listening, I'm like, pretty good. Like, I get it. I get why, like, the elements, but so rarely is it for me. And that's only because I'm not like a reductionist or whatever. Like, I'm give it to me. Like, what do you got? Like, and that could be a competitive thing too. Like, like I did put in the hours on drums. So like, I do have a bit of that like muso swagger. Like I can sit down on the drums and really play. Like, so, and I know I've been in situations with musicians in the past where they might not be as fully equipped just in terms of technical skill. And so they do rely a little bit more on, well, I'm a cool guy who does cool stuff. And it's like, man, like, I don't have an instinct for that necessarily. And I felt like, even though you are cool and I'm crazy about you and crazy about your creative energy, I kind of thought that I was going to be like working with a hipster, if you know what I mean.
Amazing.
Well, you know what I mean though, right? Like, you've worked on a lot of hip.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, my catalog is a lot in that world. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
And is that am I being offensive?
No. No.
I mean, if you're going to have Steve Vai just lazily sitting out, like, you're expecting people to make sweeping assumptions.
Well, and what's the Yngwie Malmsteen quote I have? It's
oh yeah, more is more.
Or yeah, the more is more quote. It's so good. Yeah. I think I just and like I'm a firm believer that the only thing that counts is how you make people feel. How, like, what is the song? What are you trying to get across? And how are you making me feel? Like, if I put on a pair of headphones and I listen to your music, I don't want to guess what's going to come at bar 8 when I'm at bar 2. I don't want to know what your rhyming scheme is in the first quarter of your fucking verse. Like, take risks.
Yeah.
Do something that's gonna make me feel something new.
Whew.
That's all I really care.
Huge. It's huge because I feel like, because music has turned into content. Like, we're basically like your content creating.
That's right.
The instinct for creating content has meant that a lot of low-hanging fruit ideas make it onto people's records. And like, for guys like you and I who still love being surprised, I think, by music.
Love it.
It happens so rarely because I think music is now the creation of content, and so many low-hanging fruit, like I said, ideas make it onto the radio and we just have to go. I mean, I think it's part of like why I'm just generally sound like such an old man when I think about a lot of things I stumble across musically in the mainstream. It's just like, bless you, it's too bad that yeah, like, but this speaks to, I mean, I'm somewhat like, I'm overly opinionated and passionate about this. Like, to me, like this ethos of settling for whatever it just falls out, like, or creating content for content's sake. Like, to me, it's not just bad for music, it's bad for culture, it's bad for like politics, it's bad for everything. Like it means that like it leads to people making dumbed down decisions on every front if you're like if you're absorbing dumbed down artifacts, you know, like that.
Yep.
That's how I feel.
Yep. Yeah, and you know, like there are, and your specification about like what's in the mainstream, I think, is an important one, because there is a lot of really challenging music being made.
Yeah.
The trouble is that like you got to sift through so much stuff to get through it, and that can be pretty daunting.
Yeah. It requires more energy definitely than I have, or time. Like, and I don't have necessarily somebody curating what it is I'm listening to.
Yeah.
Okay. We're never going to do this in under an hour. Just a Dream.
So much to talk about.
Just a Dream. Again, like we started all these songs from the ground up. I came in with no particular idea. You came in with no particular idea. Do you remember anything about this? Because this song also did very well for.
Well, let me push play on here. I'm trying to. Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. You're,
so good.
You're.
Well, okay, so I put this little guy on the side here because this was widely used for like sonic inspiration. We just had it on a stand. It was always plugged in, and you would just like, you know, flip this thing, and it would settle on a sound, and you just start to play, and like your brain was like, okay, so that window is open, and that's what's flying past the window, and we're just gonna go there.
Yeah.
So you just started playing that thing and that sound. We're both like, damn, this is a cool progression, you know. And I picked up a bass, I think, played that boom, 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 and we just followed that. And it was really like a very, very organic way of building a tune.
Like, and I think, you know, working with somebody like you, like, so I offhandedly just whistled that thing. It was almost atonal, but then I feel like it was your instinct to make it into a hook. Like, I just did it because I felt like it, and then you were like, that's, I think, again, when I feel like I'm in somebody's sort of loving arms is when I can just really just be letting stuff out of my body, and my body knows best, and that you are like, you latch on, like, that's something right there.
Yeah.
Even I would have been like, I don't know. Is it really, is it even in a key? Like, I don't even know, but.
Well, there's something like both catchy, and there's a levity to it, but there's also a nostalgia to it, and like that against that sort of like almost wind-like keyboard sound, and then this hard hitting drum beat, like that whole thing together really just like visually it just conjured up such a depth of emotions for me when we started putting that one together.
Yeah,
and that also was a big part of it.
It's yeah, it I remember even too feeling like, is the chorus a little too saccharine? I know that like and we had a double chorus first on the first round, and then you were like, I think if we just like clip the double chorus off the first, it won't feel so like intrusively sugary, you know. And you were right. And like, I mean, I'm grateful that song went and did well even in Canada here on the CBC and stuff, and like, it's good. That song's had a good little lifespan and like held a nice place. And even for me, like lyrically, like whenever I get like a really interesting lyric into the public sphere, like a song that catches a little bit at the radio or wherever, like whenever I can sneak a cool lyric into the public sphere, it feels like, oh, I've done my job here. Because like, it's easy to sneak a lame lyric into the public sphere. It's harder to sneak a tricky lyric into the public sphere, you know, like just because they're such a baby, come get me baby type listening culture, you know, that's like when you can sneak something absurd in, like that's when I realize like, I feel like I've done my subversive best, you know?
Well, and the other thing that I notice about your lyrics and the great lyricists that I have listened to and worked with is there's always this sense of like self-reflection, visualization that isn't unique to yourself. Like it's something that other people can find themselves swimming in and relating to. And this is a really good example of that.
Young and Wasted.
Yeah. I'm pushing play.
Hey,
yeah.
Can you turn it down? You're tricking the Zoom algorithm.
What do I do? Turning it down.
Let's see if it. Sort of hearing it.
Turn up a minute. So that one, I feel like this was one that we jammed live.
Yeah.
Right? Like I had that bass line.
Yeah.
Like you came in the morning and I had this bass line, if I'm not mistaken, and you were like, oh yeah, and you jumped on the drums and you started playing that drum beat. And that's where that song came from, right?
Yeah. And I remember we did that for like a couple of tunes where we jammed and then tracked bass and drums live and built the song from that. And that drum beat, I feel like I came in almost with a mandate to play the beat from Bauhaus's Bela Lugosi's Dead, which is that beat. I don't know why. It just was like, go in and play that beat. And I feel like you could have played me anything on the bass, and I was like, I'm going to impose the Bela Lugosi's Dead beat on anything. That's what
I don't even know that tune, so I like that. That's I'm just finding that out now.
I feel, and I feel like again, like I feel like you had more to do with how that song shook out harmonically, and I say that only because. We're screaming through shot perfume doors like enemies. Like those little it's cool. Like that melodic fragment is quite special. And I feel like I wouldn't have come up with something like that had I been responsible for the harmonic platform. For whatever reason, like and that's what I think I can sometimes tell when when somebody has given me a harmonic platform that's not instinct, like that's not of my own instinct.
Mm-hmm.
It means that the melody, it brings something like, oh wow, like it's like, which is why I'm almost inclined to like, and I know Leonard Cohen started to do that in the last years of his career. Like he started to have basically he would co-write with people because I think he probably got tired of his, you know, C, G, D, E minor, A minor universe, which, you know, like, and you want to go like, there's more harmony out there. I just never put in the time on the guitar to figure out how to play that stuff, you know?
Yep.
So then we go to side B on the vinyl, Acid Dreams, which we talked about.
Yep.
I feel like it's one of the last tunes that was written and one of the ones I had the least amount of faith in because it was a weirdo from day one, and like,
didn't we write like 3 choruses for that one?
Or 3 choruses.
Yeah.
One was a metal chorus.
I would love to dig back into those early sessions and hear that metal chorus, because I remember when we came up with it, you and I lost our minds. But that there was that voice in the back of my head that was like, "No, we've crossed a line."
I felt that too. And again, what I love about you and what you bring to that the working process is, even though probably you and I both knew that what we were working towards was fundamentally was not usable, and maybe this is just you and I both having done this for years, but we followed it through. I remember we took an exasperated lunch break because we were so hungry, having pursued an idea we both knew, I think instinctively, we're going to throw out. Yeah. And we did it on an empty stomach, and that kind of like, I got to get away from this. And then I feel like after lunch and after a second coffee, it was like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing here.
I mean, it was I remember it being very entertaining.
Yeah.
But I also like put myself in the shoes of a listener who'd experienced what came before that chorus and thinking,
Yeah.
you just set off a fucking hand grenade in a like we set a scene and the scene is this, beautiful landscape, and then suddenly you just throw a fucking hand grenade.
Well,
very funny.
And sometimes you do, I guess, have to throw the hand grenade to just see it. Like, again, one of the things as I've gotten older is, and I learned a lot of this, honestly, working in theater, was that sometimes you have to be ready to destroy something or to throw it out or to have it be like, you can't always just keep stuff to justify the hours you put in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh, well, this has to go on the record because I put the hours in on it. It's like, or it doesn't go in because maybe there's no intrinsic value here. Maybe this was just an experiment.
Yep.
You have to chalk this up to a learning experience.
Oh yeah, there's always going to be wastage.
Which, were you always comfortable with that when you were younger working, or is that something you've grown more like?
I learned that more from some of the bigger records I worked on. I would say probably the first record I really saw how, working hard on something for weeks and throwing it away was part of a creative process was Suburbs.
Yeah.
We recorded, I'm gonna quote a number of tapes, and I'm not sure if I'm right, but I'm sure we recorded 52-inch analog tapes worth of music, and there were definitely multiple songs that we spent days and sometimes weeks on that never made the record. You know, and same with the National. I mean, we recorded tons of stuff that went in the trash. And to the betterment of the songs and to the betterment of the record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in Canada, on indie record budgets, we just, as Canadian artists, have maybe like sort of allocated ourselves, because we're always making records under a time crunch and a budget crunch. Like we haven't marinated in the idea that you can throw a lot of stuff out because just of the absurd amount of expense of having to do that. So it's a real luxury. And I think for guys like you and I who have our own studios and stuff, it's something that we budget into the economy of making a record now. Like it's not, because we're not always like spending our time in these expensive studios like we would have 20 years ago. You're still spending more time in expensive studios than I am, but like we're not doing that with the same, like that's just not happening like it used to. So when you're putting in 10 hours in your own, personal studio of work into something that might be thrown out, it's not as devastating as when you're like in a studio that's
$1,000 studio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I still think it's a valuable exercise to throw things out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a valuable exercise to throw things out.
And we chucked a fair amount of stuff on this record for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. We chucked stuff.
Yep.
Tahiti Treat, second song on side B. I know.
It's ridiculous. It's amazing. I actually cannot put that song on in my house. Like even if it doesn't matter where my daughter is. If I put that song on, she'll come running up from her room or, the playroom or whatever into the living room and we'll dance. It's one of those.
It's funny. I feel like if it had just come out 15 years sooner, that may have been a contender for first single.
Yeah.
Somebody asked on Twitter, like, who said at the end that there's a lot of ideas in there, and whether it was you or whether it was me.
It was you for sure.
Yeah. I almost embarrassingly, because I remember we were tracking live drums at Mixart.
Yep.
And when that song's over, like anytime I hear Tahiti Train, I'm like, man, it's so ridiculous.
It's chock-a-block.
It's chock-a-block. It's
That's
like an
amazing.
embarrassment of riches, like in terms of just like, and I feel like it's almost a little bit too much, which is why I think I remember sending Around Here and Tahiti Treat to Donovan Woods. I was like, I'm going to include 2 new songs in an email that are inclined to blow your mind. And he responded back immediately, like, Around Here is the shit. Like, I think he liked Tahiti Treat. In fact, he just sent me a text on the weekend about one of the lyrics in Tahiti Treat. About the Papa Wheelie is important when you're a boy, and when you grow up, everything makes you annoyed.
Again.
But that song pushes the limits, I think, for people, some people.
I don't think it's too much.
I don't think it's too much.
Like in a similar way to like you know, that huge Outcast song, like Hey Ya, what it's called? You know, some people will listen to that song and think this is so ridiculous, it's too much. Yeah. And it is. It's ridiculous, and it's so over the top that some people are going to think it's too much. But that's the same for all the best music, you know. I am so proud of Tahiti Treat. I'm so proud that we followed that song. Like it was a living, breathing entity that needed to see the light, and now it has wings, and it's just this crazy journey that is so damn fun to experience.
I totally agree. I totally feel like it's one of my proudest like pop music moments of my entire career. Like, I think sometimes in Canada, as Canadian artists, like within the industry, like we just don't have the audacity of the American industry and of the British industry. And I think that, like you said, like, is it as good as a Hey Ya? It absolutely is. But like, you know, the Canadian industry being what it is, they're not as gutsy to get behind stuff that's like that's difficult, you know. Like I think in like, and maybe like we all get a little bit tuned to knowing within Canada what the Canadian industry is going to be willing to get behind. And it's part of the reason why like we don't have a history of having an audacity to what it is we often create, which is sometimes, well, it's largely why I'm not in the industry anymore. Like, and why I'm as super indie is that I don't have to answer for songs like Tahiti Treat anymore. I just need to be in a room with a guy like you going, this is the best thing I've ever done. And I don't have to deal with an industry person going like, it's kind of weird, Hawksley. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you deal with that for a number of years, and then you just stop putting music like that forward, because it's like, it's never going to find a home. It's never going to get anybody excited. And I definitely had a lot of years in my career where I was trying to undo my natural self and try to be the thing that the label or that the industry was like, if you were just a little more like this. I mean, back in the day, people wanted me to succeed at a high level because I was a real talent, and, you know, people had a lot invested in me, and rightly so. Like I'm good at this thing. It's the only thing I'm really good at, you know. But you know, when your success is incumbent on like being able to pitch one down the middle, like I'm just not that guy. And I feel like, again, like going into a situation where you celebrated the fact that we were making something ridiculous, like a Tahiti Treat, where in your mindset it's like, let's have this, not like, whoa, like, woohoo, run away, it's scary, it's a lot of ideas. And so again, at the end of that song, when I'm playing the thing, and it's like, it's fucking absurd. That's an absurd piece of music, especially that like an extra idea for no reason other than just to have an extra idea.
Yep. And you're like, damn straight. Well, the original, because
I mean, that song, the original version of that song, that was the chorus, right? The guitar breakdown, like in our minds, that guitar breakdown moment, which isn't actually a guitar,
Yeah.
was the chorus, and it happened twice in the song.
Really?
Yep.
So then we pull it apart.
Yeah.
Because it was too. So it was like even for us, it was like, oh, too much.
Oh yeah. There was like a a seventh gear in this song that we both like. Because there's a couple moments where I'd be like walking down the street thinking about the tunes, and so on this one I was like, I think we need to do an edit on that one, and I tried a couple and I sent you that one, and we were both like, yeah, I think that's enough reeling it in, so it's still like over the top but not like sledgehammery,
Yeah.
like now it's like a cold bucket of water, not a sledgehammer.
I feel like "Come Hold Me Tightly in Your Candid Arms." Like I feel like there's also some lyric moments in this the song.
Amazing.
I'm so glad they're in the world. Like I'm so glad that these ideas are attached to me and are attached to you. And like, I don't know, I still get really proud. Like to me, all the other thing, like pop music is still like a puzzle to be solved to me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
It's still beautiful math. Like I feel like I was maybe like, I let myself drop out of math too soon in high school, only because I don't think math was like sold to me as like this mystical magic thing. But within the context of music, I get to interact with mathematics in a way that makes sense to me, which is this shit is mystical. And like, I know I'm cracking like mathematic code when there is like this beautiful hidden symmetry in pop music that you can kind of like put together, and it doesn't want to balance, and then it finally sits balanced, like a song like Tahiti Treat, where there is a lot of ideas, there is a lot of absurdity, there is a lot of elements that are hard to create a balance with, harmonic elements, rhythmic elements. And then once this thing starts to like hover on its own, it's like it has its own power, it has its own like mathematical, like it's self-actual
kind of gravitation, like gratification to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just feel like that song to me, like, again, I don't even know if we're going to put the money behind trying to make it a single, because I think it will make people scratch their heads. Like, I think this is too much for, common.
I mean, the people I've played it for have been absolutely blown away and super excited about it. Really.
Well,
it's wild. It is wild in a great way.
Well, I'm grateful for that song. I'm working on the video right now, slowly working on the video. Okay, moving right along. Good Old Fashioned Acid Rain, which I wrote with Steve Bays and Murray Lightburn.
Very fun.
Very fun song. But I feel like, did you play a wicked guitar solo in that? Which was the
yeah, I think I did the solo in Slow Suicide.
Slow Suicide.
Yeah, I added a rhythm guitar to Good Old Fashioned Rain, I think. Oh no, that's Slow Suicide, isn't it?
Yeah, Slow Suicide.
Yeah, I think I added a little rhythm guitar to Good Old Fashioned Rain and then played a solo in Slow Suicide. Yeah.
And I'm grateful that you treated those two outsider songs as your own when it came time to bring them in, because that's just kind of who you are. You're one of those. We've talked about ego a little bit in this discussion, and you aren't an ego guy. And like, again, like I feel a little bit bad maybe if I talking about expecting you to be a hipster, but you're also a tall, handsome guy. And I have a fundamental, like, I'm fundamentally intimidated, like, just walking into the room, like, you're 6'5" or whatever, and, like, you're handsome looking guy, and I'm like, man, am I really, like, supposed to, like, what am I supposed to let out in front of this, like, mega dude, who's, like, also, like, he's also, like, physically a presence. No, I'm not. I'm setting up a scene because, like, even for for people who maybe don't know me well, the part that I will reveal is like, I got a lot of confidence, and then I have like these very bizarre, like I'm ready to be intimidated. Like I'm ready to walk in and like be intimidated by tall, handsome Marcus Paquin, who's like worked on cool records. Like I'm ready to walk in and go, I'm gonna put my confidence on the table while I come up with a plan to deal with this guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but with that said, so like, it's not everybody who you would bring in like two foreign entities into a record that you and I had conceived of together. And it's like, oh, do you mind if I bring two of my past lovers in? You're like, whoa, what? Like you invited them in as like, you know, you treated them like children, and that you didn't have to.
I mean, you gotta, if like, it definitely took me a while to figure out where ego has a place in making music and where it needs to just shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think that the more success we all have as a community, the better off we are. And, you know, so it's like, I love what Murray's done. I love what Steve has done. I love what you did with those guys. And like, the more successful those two songs are, it does good for you. It does good for them. It does good for me. It does good for everybody, because you see what collaborating and putting great minds together can do. You know, it just, again, it's like some of its parts, you know, like I felt like what you'd done with them already was awesome. I felt like there was something I could contribute to that, and I was just following the song, and they're great songs. So yeah, that's where the ego needs to shut up. Like, just go away, ego, because what really counts is that the songs are as great as they can be.
I feel like I learned that, and you might be different than me. I learned that I was more comfortable with this idea after I had success of my own. I remember when Striptease went on the radio in like 2001 about.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it bought me the freedom to feel more relaxed about what other people were doing. Because up till then, I was fighting a war on my own, trying to build my career. And it was just like, me. I got to win. I got to go forward. I got to be the one that's on the radio. And then once you have that a bit of success, and you've had big success yourself, do you find that you were able to think these bigger conceptual thoughts on ego and on like your role as a producer after you had success? Like, could you have thought this way when you were just a kid, like trying to make an impression?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of it contributed to a thought process dealing with ego and self-esteem, creativity, collaboration, and how all those things can either be complementary or destructive towards each other.
Yeah.
And so I think I wouldn't have had that conversation with myself had I not had those big records.
Yeah.
I don't know that the big records helped me with my ego, because I was kind of, you know, in suburbs, certainly I was an engineer. In the national, I had a slightly more creative role, but really I was kind of accessories to those things. But I think what I did see in those was a work process and people's hard work going towards this incredible piece of art.
Yeah.
And then the ego part was something that I kind of addressed a little bit after that, and it was a little bit independent of the success of those records.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty interesting, because the ego is definitely something that you and I would, like, the kind of discussion we're having right now is not dissimilar to the kind of discussion you and I would have whenever we're together. I mean, when Susie and I are in a room, we're talking about disassembling the ego and like creative instincts, all these things that, like, especially too for like people our age and people of our age within a business that doesn't like being old in the music business, or being older, is like, this is a business that celebrates young faced people, you know, like that's who we're promoting, you know? So it's tricky, like, to have long careers like you and I have had, and to see how to have a narrative that lasts decades long, to see the person you become alongside a career that like has its ups and downs, is pretty fascinating. Like,
Yeah, big time.
So just, we'll hit on this last tune on this record, Name the Strays, which I always joke that I like to have one completely improvised lyric on every record that I make, which is just because I'm a Jay-Z fanatic, and like I'm always trying to be as good as Jay-Z. He's like a talisman of high quality, but also somebody who like who's offhanded, like just improvisational flow is so frightening that to me, like, I just always want to attempt to riff with that kind of freedom, you know? And so, and I appreciate too, because that song, you and I poked at that thing together and effectively ran out of steam on it, because it was like 10 minutes worth of me riffing improvised lyrics.
On a loop
that you built
on an SPD SX through my trainer guitar amp.
Yeah.
And a loop pedal, like literally. No click track.
Yeah, no click track. All the stuff that makes it a pain in the ass to deal with when it's all done. As well as just like me, like I said, improvising for 8 or 10 minutes and knowing there was some good stuff, but lots of like jeepers, like shitty stuff in there. And so you suggested hand it off to who?
Matt Schellenberg. The great Matt Schellenberg in Winnipeg.
Winnipeg from
of Royal Canoe.
Canoe fame.
Yeah.
Now, I have my own like relationship to Matt and Royal Canoe. One, Matt, I went out to Winnipeg for the Manitoba Music Federation. I did like one-on-ones with local artists, and I met Matt when he was still a kid, and he was an impressive kid back then. Mounties, when I was out in East Vancouver with Mounties recording our first record, we were like on a walk to get some sushi or something, and we went by a club in the East End, and one of the guys from the Zolas was like outside saying like, the best band in Canada is playing a gig tonight. And we were like, well, we're the best band in Canada, but we'll check this out. Whoa. And then of course we went down there. It was Royal Canoe, and like, I was scared shitless from what I saw from them. I was like, fuck me. So creative, so audacious. And then, so when you said, we'll send this shit off to Matt Schellenberg and see what he does, like, I was like, hey, thank God we don't have to be responsible for this. But also, again, like, it was that great reaching into the community and seeing who's going to have some calories to burn on this idea. Like, who can we trust to take what appears to you and I as something worth saving?
Totally,
I didn't have the energy for it. Like, not knowing.
Yeah, it was funny because like, yeah, I think we both felt a little bit the same, like that it had a lot of potential, but for whatever reason, I was like, I don't know that I know what direction this wants to go.
Yeah.
And it happens sometimes, and when I do, you know, you do a handoff.
Yeah.
And kudos for you to being open to doing that too.
I'm always looking for, I like treats, you know, like I like in all parts of life. Like, I like when you get the thing you bought, plus there's somehow there's a treat included. I'm like, all right. Like, and so sometimes even for songs, getting a song on a record, like even like when we were touring with Celine, and Celine wanted to cut one of her songs, like, I want to cut this. Well, that was going to be cutting one of my treats, because it's a song that I like playing with you on bass.
Oh, groovy.
We had a sweet groove going, and I was playing drums, and Celine was like, oh, I don't like it. I'm like, whoa. Like, don't cut one of my treats. Because like, my treat is I get to play with you, and we had a feel. And I knew that the treat for me in Name the Strays was I was going to get my improvised lyric to the record, which to me, like I said, is like one of my little goals. I try to get one of those on every record, some more successful than others. I've seen some of my improvised lyrics on past records be referred to very in unflattering ways with people online in their comments, and I'm like, I get it. Like it is absurd. I should have probably like spent some time. But we all
I didn't know about the Jay-Z thing. This is it's the first I heard about that being a thing of yours.
Oh man, well,
it's so, you know, it's so funny. So we had this like this period of working together, and like I'd known you because we like you said, we're about the same age, and I remember hearing your tunes and seeing on Much Music and all that stuff, and being really impressed and really enjoying your music, and then working together, and then having this thing that was done, and then after all that, like reading about you, I don't remember like if I Googled you or whatever, and then there was, they said like Hawksley Workman like writes and records songs within a day, and I read all these things, and I was like, oh shit, maybe I should have read this before we started working together. Because, you know, like some of the tunes when we started recording early, in my mind it was all pre-prod. We were doing pre-prod and we were writing, and then we were gonna go into a studio or something and then record the songs. And then as we were, you know, like day 3, I was like, wait a second, I think this is the record.
That's really funny. I will say that I have done that to a couple of other, a little bit to other people. I don't have the attention span for pre-production and all that stuff. Like I don't have, again, I'm learning that attention span. I'm learning a better attention span through my work in theater. You have a natural patience that I don't have for that kind of thing. And I also know that you know that it does lead to a better product in a lot of cases.
In a lot of cases, but like, you know, when I listen to this record, part of me wonders, you know, had I pushed to re-record things, I don't know that it would have been as spontaneous, you know? Like, I think that's another thing I've learned over the years, is that sometimes, you know, there's such a thing as demoitis, where people sort of hold on to something that's maybe could be improved upon, and sometimes actually first thought, best thought, you know?
Yeah. It's funny because I suffer from both those. I am both demoitis and first thought, best thought.
Right.
And I've spent a lot of the last, I would say 10 years trying to disassemble a lot of some of my biases. Like even like about coolness within music. Like a lot of people listen to music because it's like, it's about the belonging to the community that belongs to that music. I never necessarily had that because in high school, I listened to stuff that fascinated me. I didn't need to wear the t-shirt. I wasn't listening to music for those reasons, but I do realize as somebody who makes music and makes music for a living, that the belonging to a community is a big part of music. It's just something that I never really felt necessarily like. And so why am I saying this? What are we talking about here? About
well, we're talking first thought, best thought.
Right.
We're talking about the creative process, pre-prod.
Right. First thought, best thought. Yeah. Right. So one of the things I definitely am trying to separate myself from is like, I'm trying to separate myself from my biases, and I'm trying to just listen. Do I like or do I not like? I think you're in the same boat. I think you and I have spent time trying to disassociate from some of our natural biases. Like, you know, like you can see lots of the natural biases play out in the ecosystem of the music business. Like people are just like, I hate Sting. Like Sting's a big one. It's like, Sting never did anything good after the Police. And it's like a natural instinct within the indie hip cool music thing that like the rule is you can't like solo Sting. Well, fuck.
Yeah, right.
I love solo Sting. Like, Dream of the Blue Turtles is one of the most important records of my childhood. Like,
yeah, Branford Marsalis.
It's Marsalis, Omar Hakim, like,
yeah, heavy.
Right. So not having music as sort of a feature of like your sense of belonging. I understand that there are people in the world where they do listen to music for that sense of belonging. And I don't exactly know what kind of point I'm trying to make, only that I think that you and I, in our journey and our relationship to music and how and why we still make it and the things that are still surprising and beautiful and exciting are, if you are every day attempting to please your ears and not your ego or some of these old biases that come from like, your older brother was a music fan and your older brother said, you know, cool people don't like this music. They like this music.
Yeah. You can't listen to AC/DC and Duran Duran.
Right. And you and I think that's another thing you and I have really in common is
love them both.
We love it all. Like, if it's great, I'm in. If it's not great, I'm out. And I know that that's, people are like, well, music is subjective. And it's like, it is, and then it isn't. Right? Like you can't listen to Steve Vai and say, well, the greatness of this is subjective. It's like,
right.
No, it isn't.
Right.
The greatness in this is fucking about as obvious as you can get. And if you're attempting to deny that, I don't know where we even start.
Yeah, you're playing devil's advocate.
Yeah.
There's a difference between recognizing that something, the person making a piece of art has an innate talent, and whether you like it or not. Those are different conversations.
And then, but I think that there's like, then I'm going to race to not like Steve Vai because the aesthetic is fundamentally offensive to my aesthetic rules. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah.
You have aesthetic rules, but I think they're pretty open. Do you think?
I think that music hits me viscerally.
Yeah.
And I make records for a living. I listen to music almost every day either with clients that I'm working with or right now working on my own music. And I'll work on music as my job all day. And then at night, I will put on music to listen to for pleasure. Well, and I am, I certainly know there's the stuff from my past that I'll always come back to, but I'm also in the pursuit. I'm always looking for new stuff that's moving, like I'm an uber fan of Frank Ocean and SZA and Charlie XCX, and there's all this new stuff that I listen to, and I put on my headphones and I listen to it, and the reason I like it is because it makes me feel something. Yeah. And I don't care what style it is. Like, how would you categorize this music? I don't give a fuck. Yeah. I don't care. If I feel something new, something deep, it's the most visceral art form that I've ever experienced as a child. From the first day I sat down, put Abbey Road on my mom's turntable when I was 4 years old. Wow. It hit me like nothing else did. I'm getting teary just thinking about it. And it still does. Music, I cannot listen to Golden Slumbers without crying. I can't even talk about it without crying. And to me, every record I make, I think about how music impacted me and gave me so many things. And I hope that my part in making that record will give somebody something similar.
It's huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. I mean, it's huge that you listen to music outside of professional context. I do that. And I take personal responsibility to that. I'm listening to more music now. In this new house, we've got our hi-fi player, which you can see in the background, and I'm making the effort to listen to more music and be into more music again.
Are you listening to, what's your, are you putting on records? Like, what are you listening from?
We do like vinyl records. Now that
Yeah.
that both Jenny and I don't really drink anymore, like we do like records at dinner time usually. Like now that I have a studio space again, not unlike your studio space, about the same size, and I have my ritual of going into the studio again now that I have a space every day. If I'm not recording stuff, I'm listening usually in there. Like
do you listen to Spotify, or do you?
I listen to Spotify.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know.
Well, me too. And like, there's so many great things about Spotify, like access to music that, like, when we were kids, all this like, Japanese issued Miles Davis stuff, like this stuff that you could not find when we were kids, and now you just click it and it's right there. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
The quality is tough, and I think I've tricked my ears into believing that it's okay. But I definitely, like, I'm toying with the idea of maybe doing like a Tidal or something a little bit more hi-fi.
I should probably do that as well, and just to signal to the industry, like, from my sad little position, that like I can't believe in a way that the industry has come to the place where it is, and like where the way music is traded and sold is still feels very much in disarray, and like that we're all like this, like that it's created fundamental like issues for all of us still working within the business. But you can't knock the convenience, and like for just to be able to like check stuff out. Like I also was thinking while you were talking about the Beatles and about listening to music, you and I were both listening to a lot of African music when we were making this record. You were obsessed with Bongwana Star, is that what it was? And I was listening to a lot of Tony Allen.
Oh.
Yeah. And again, like, this is funny, like when you're making a record, it took me making a lot of records to realize that you only ever are the person you are when you're making that record. And like, I'm a big Bruce Cockburn fan, and he's somebody who's put out a lot of records. And I, as a fan, was sometimes critical of like, oh, he put out a record that I didn't really like. Why do you do that? And then fast forward to my own career, and it's like, oh shit, what happens for artists who put out a lot of music is sometimes they just aren't in the place in their life where you want them.
That's right. Yep. Yeah.
I feel like you were obsessing over Bongwana Star. I was obsessing over Tony Allen. I feel like it was just a coincidence. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
And that was just like a coincidence that you and I walked into the same room with, like, having an instinct, like, oh, the current thing influencing my instinct is this. And it was like, hey, it's this for me. It's like, oh, easy,
Yeah.
Which was a pretty cool thing. Steve Vai again. I follow Steve Vai on Instagram. I still I read all his posts. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Like there couldn't be anybody further away from our aesthetic, but contained within a thing that aesthetically is not you or I, is a level of genius, of invention, and of pure virtuosity that I think that's where you and I get down on our knees and go, like, the compositional energy of Steve Vai. He's not just a contained within that is a melodic narrative, are things that are like the work of somebody who's got something seriously musical going on, right?
Yeah. And he's not sitting on his laurels either. Like, he continues to challenge himself. You sent me that one video of this new technique that he's developed, is like these interesting bends, like melody bends, and I was like, damn, this guy like just keeps pushing the envelope.
And I sent you an acoustic guitar thing he did recently too.
Yeah.
Like, holy fuck! Like, again, but I think this is exciting for me too, because I'm still, and I feel like maybe you're similar. I'm still looking for musical heroes, and I am interested in what people who've been around a while are still doing, especially people who are, like you say, not resting on laurels, not regurgitating their glorious moments of the past, but who are still fiercely chasing down something fresh. Like, I'm interested in these kinds of energies in the world. And like, as much as like, you know, we just watched SNL a couple weeks ago with Lizzo, and I'm like, fuck, like that, down, check your nails. Like, I don't own that record. I've never played it off of Spotify, but whenever it's being played, I stop and I go,
Yeah.
the invention contained within this is so awesome.
Yeah.
That I just got to absorb the newness of it. Like, but like, it's not often I'm looking into the landscape of pop music and going like, holy, like the invention contained within this thing is blowing my mind.
Right.
Although, like, I am sometimes looking for that energy from like more hidden sources, more old. Like, I think too, like the business is busy telling you like that you're too old and funny looking to be a player anymore, you know? And so like, and I'm more interested in like, well, what are older, more funny looking people doing then? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what are they putting into the world?
Oh my God. You're a handsome man, Hawksley.
Oh,
Handsome.
come
You've
on.
ever been, my friends.
Marcus, we've been talking for almost an hour and a half. We should probably wrap up only because.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, please tell us about what your music and what you're working on, because I was blessed during the very beginnings of COVID. You sent me a whack of demos, of course, and they were all mind-blowing. And that was really exciting. And I was excited to be let in on your personal process. Tell everybody where you're at right now, just because it'd be cool to get people into the mindset that they should be checking what you're going to put out.
Well, at this point, I have 13, is it 13? More like 16 tunes that are mostly tracked. I've got 4 that are done, and I'm going to mix this week. And I'm sort of figuring out what I'm going to do, how I'm going to put them out into the world. I may or may not put them out myself. I may sort of shop them around. I'm just kind of like right now focused on getting them done.
Yeah.
Because Amy from Arts and Crafts heard the whack of them, and then we kind of fine-tuned sort of a top 4 just to kind of put out there that are sort of indicative of the lot of them. So I've been focusing on those, and then this week I'll get those mixed, and then we'll kind of decide what we're going to do with those.
Okay.
But I'm stoked, you know, something about COVID put me in this place where I was thinking a lot of stuff and feeling a lot of stuff, and all those emotions were getting channeled into lyrics in a way that I haven't felt before. And so I've traditionally been more of kind of a music guy, generate harmony, melody, rhythm, and lyrics were always something that I kind of like, God damn it, now I have to write lyrics, you know? And something happened to me at the beginning of COVID where lyrics became this super fun puzzle, you know? And I think a lot of it can be attributed to you and seeing your process, seeing Matt Berninger's process. I did some writing with Maya Davies, who was she's a brilliant songwriter who was a singer in Ladies of the Canyon, and working with lyricists like you guys made me realize that ultimately truth, expressing a truth and following that truth in whatever story, however that truth wants to unfold, is it becomes a really fun challenge. And so these tunes have really, it's been the first time that I've written lyrics that are so personal, and that it's been so fun to do, so fun to write lyrics for the first time.
And your lyrics are mega strong. Like,
thanks.
Yeah, like it was like it's strong stuff. Very strong. I mean, I haven't heard what you've done. I know you went in and started to like flesh it out a little bit more. Even the demos I found super compelling. In fact, I think I was like, they're done. The record's done. Put this thing out right now. I like
And it's possible you were right. You know, I think what I've done since then has added, but you know, I'll run them past you and maybe you'll tell me different.
I think that I like demos, and I think that the world is like, because of the level of polish that we can add to a piece of recorded music now, like the world hears everything in tune, everything in time. And so sometimes like what we hear in demos is just what we used to hear in like old Rolling Stones records, like vocals that haven't been tuned yet, or you know, a guitar that was like.
I didn't kill any of that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, the demos are the backbones for everything. So you know, some of the live off the floor piano takes with no click track that sag and push, and those are still all there. So yeah, but I agree. There's sometimes this pursuit of, you know, perfection and making things better and making sure everything's on the grid. I think that's, you know, those things have a place sometimes, but I definitely think they're overused.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though I'm really into it these days.
Like super gridded out and super pitch it, super auto-tuned.
I think it's just because it's just what you hear now, and like,
yeah,
when I hear stuff now that's out of tune, I just don't have my stomach doesn't want to hear it anymore for whatever.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, I miss you.
I miss you too, man. Nice to see you. It's lovely to have an excuse to chat together.
Yeah, big time. Very lovely. I look and I get such a warm feeling from seeing that room again, a room that like you've invited me into many mornings. We've had many coffees in there. We've had many big chats, and it's just a good feeling zone. I think of all the great music that's been made in that room as well, which is also pretty crazy. It's like you walk into like a vibe zone there in Park X. It's
well, you're always, you know, that you're always invited back here. It's always your space as well as mine, my friend.
Okay. And I'll probably see you on the road again with Sarah Slean if they ever let us play shows.
Please. Yeah. None of this virtual shit, man. Real people in a real room.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, buddy. Thanks for the chat.
Yeah. Lots of love.
You too.
Bye.